I still remember the exact way the door clicked shut that evening. Danish walked in, not like a husband coming home, but like a stranger with a secret too heavy to carry. He didn't take off his shoes, didn't even look at me as he walked. Passed and dropped his keys on the table like it was any other day. I was folding laundry in the lounge. The sound of the fan circling overhead blending with the silence between us. 6 years of marriage and I knew his every mood. But this time, I couldn't read him. "Zara," he said finally, standing near the doorway. I looked up and smiled weakly. "You're late." "Dinner's still warm, though." He didn't sit. He didn't smile back instead. He said something that shattered the bones in my body without ever touching me. "I got married." My hands stopped moving. "What?" I whispered, though I heard him clearly. "I got married," he repeated, like he was confirming a business deal. "Her name is Samra." My mind refused to absorb the words. He said it again, her name. Samra. I couldn't speak. My lips were trembling, but no words came out. I stood up slowly, clutching the towel in my hand like it was a lifeline. Looked away, as if he couldn't bear the sight of me breaking, or maybe he didn't care. He walked past me and sat down on the couch, picked up the remote like we were going to watch TV together. "I know it's sudden," he said, "but it's allowed."
Ow.
You know that. Aloud, I wasn't thinking about religion or law. I was thinking about the nights we lay side by side, making promises. I was thinking about the chai we drank on the rooftop, the stupid fights over which curtains to buy. The time he held my hand at the hospital when I thought we'd lost the baby. He called it aloud. I called it betrayal. When managed to say, my voice hoarse. Last week, he answered without looking at me. "She's coming home tomorrow. I want you to be respectful." I stared at him. Respectful. He wanted me to prepare the house for the woman who broke it. That night, I made dinner anyway. I didn't eat. He did. He told me she liked dal. I had cooked chicken. I didn't say a word. Later, when we went to bed, he lay on one side, scrolling through his phone. I lay on the edge, my back to him, closer to the wall than to my husband. I stared at the paint chipped on the corner of the room. Funny, I always meant to fix that. I thought we'd do it together. Maybe next month, we'd repaint everything. A new color. A fresh start. But now, even the wall was more familiar than the man beside me. I couldn't cry. Not because I wasn't broken, but because crying felt too small for this kind of pain. I didn't sleep. I just closed my eyes and listened to his breathing. It was calm, peaceful, like a man who had nothing to lose. And me. I had just lost everything I thought I was. The next morning I made tea for him like I always did. He sipped it and said nothing. He didn't even notice my swollen eyes or the way my hands shook. Then he left for work saying, "Be ready. She'll be here by 6. And just like that, I was no longer the only woman in my own marriage. I heard her before I saw her. Asterisk. Her laughter echoed from the hallway like perfume and sound. Form sweet, sharp, lingering. And then she stepped in. Samra, asterisk, she, walked into the house like she owned it. Asterisk lipstick bright. Bangles jingling, wearing a smile that didn't match the pain under my ribs. She carried 2 suitcases and a confidence I lost long ago. Asterisk Danish introduced her casually. "This is Samra, my wife." The word slipped off his tongue like he was introducing a business partner. I stood there, holding a tray of tea, unsure whether to smile or scream. I did neither. Asterisk, "Assalamu alaikum," she said, smiling at me like I was some kind of receptionist. Asterisk, "Wa alaikum assalam," I replied quietly. Asterisk, the teacups on the tray rattled slightly. My hands were shaking. I hoped no one noticed. Asterisk, they did. Of course, but no one cared. Everything changed. Every room now had a third presencers. Her bags were in the bedroom before I could even blink. My closet space shrunk. My silence grew. Asterisk, she started rearranging things. Danish helped. Asterisk, he used to hate scented candles. Now he lit them every night because Samra likes the vibe. Asterisk, couch that once held our movie nights now held her legs. Sprawled across his lap, asterisk at dinner, she sat next to him laughing loudly, feeding him bites of food like I wasn't even there. My seat was gone. I now sat quietly at the edge of the table, next to Amy, who said nothing, but smiled politely whenever Samra giggled. Asterisk, Amy never disliked me. She just liked Samra's shine more. She's so confident, Zara, she told me once. Modern girls have their own spark, but you could learn a thing or two. Asterisk, I didn't reply, just folded more laundry that wasn't mine anymore at night. The wall grew farther away. Asterisk Danish, and I no longer shared a bed. He moved into the other room with Samra, and the silence of my own bedroom screamed louder than ever. I curled into myself, wrapped in a shawl of memories, wondering what I had done wrong. Asterisk, had I been too soft, too quiet, too safe? One evening, I sat in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes until my fingers turned red. Samra's laughter rang from the lounge. Danish's voice joined in. He laughed with her. Asterisk, it wasn't just laughter, it was joy. The kind of joy I used to give him once. Asterisk, my eyes filled with tears, but I blinked fast. If I cried too long, someone might notice, and I didn't want their sympathy. I wanted my husband back, but he wasn't mine anymore. Asterisk Rita came over. The next day, she always did when she sensed my silence growing too loud. Asterisk, I made tea for us, the same way I always did. Asterisk, she sat quietly, watching me move like a ghost through my own kitchen. Asterisk, she moved in, didn't she? She asked gently. I nodded. She's loud, I whispered, and bright, and everywhere. Asterisk Rita reached out and touched my hand. You're allowed to feel this, Zara. Asterisk, no, I said quickly. Have to be a good wife. Have to stay. Quiet. What else can I do? Asterisk Rita's eyes softened. You can survive, even if it means rebuilding from ash. Asterisk, I wanted to believe her. But ashes don't rebuild. They scatter. Asterisk, that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I counted the cracks in the paint. 1, 2, 3. Asterisk, like the people in this house now. Me, him, and her. Every object, every corner, every memory now had a third shadow. And I wasn't sure mine still mattered. I didn't expect balloons or a cake. I didn't expect a surprise dinner or a wrapped gift. But I did expect something, a smile, a whispered happy birthday from the man I once thought was mine. Asterisk instead. I got silence. Asterisk, that morning, Danish walked right past me, tying his tie and checking his phone. He didn't look up. Samra sat on the couch, scrolling through her feed, complaining about a chipped nail. Asterisk, even Amy, who once used to cook my favorite Kia on this day, was busy helping Samra choose bangles for some cousin's wedding. Asterisk not. One of them said the words asterisk. I stood in the kitchen, stirring chai that no one asked for, wondering if I had become invisible or if I had never really existed to them in the first place. Asterisk. I poured myself a cup and sat by the window. The sky was gray, clouds heavy like my chest. The tea was warm, but my hands were cold. Asterisk, I stared at the road outside. At strangers walking with umbrellas, children laughing, cars passing. All of them had somewhere to be, someone to go to. Asterisk me. I had this chair, this silence, and the ache in my ribs. Asterisk, at 7 p.m. Danish walked out of the room, dressed in his best blue shirt. It's the one I bought him 2 years ago. He didn't even notice I was watching. Where are you going? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk, he looked at me like I was asking something unreasonable. Taking Samra out. I blinked. Once. Twice. Today. Today was my birthday, but I didn't remind him. If love had to be reminded, it wasn't love. Asterisk, they left. She wore red and heels and lipstick. He held the door open for her. Asterisk, when it shut behind them. The silence was worse than anything I'd heard before. I looked at the empty house. At the couch. at the flickering light in the corner of the room, and I broke. I walked into my bedroom, picked up my shawl, and left without saying a word. Rita opened the door before I could knock twice. Asterisk the moment she saw my face. Her smile faded. Asterisk I collapsed into her arms like a child. Asterisk I didn't speak at first. I just cried. Asterisk not soft, graceful tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that came from the pit of my soul. She held me like only a sister could. No questions, no advice, just warmth. Asterisk when I finally found breath between the sobs, I whispered, "Why am I not enough, Rita?" Asterisk she didn't answer. She just hugged me tighter. That night, I stayed in her guest room. The window overlooked a small garden. The moon hung low. I sat on the bed with an old notebook in my lap, one I had abandoned years ago. Asterisk it was my diary. From early marriage, I used to write in it every week. Asterisk it had my dreams, my recipes, my little notes about Danish's smiles. Asterisk now. It was dusty, forgotten just like me. Asterisk I opened to the last page. The date was 4 years old, and slowly, with trembling fingers, I picked up a pen and wrote, "I am still alive, but barely." There was a strange comfort in writing again. Asterisk paper didn't interrupt. Ink didn't judge. Asterisk I poured everything into it. My pain, my numbness, my confusion, my rage. Asterisk that night, I didn't sleep. I just wrote asterisk, and somewhere between the tears and the words, something inside me cracked not in a way that broke me, but in a way that let the light in. Asterisk a quiet voice inside me whispered, "Asterisk, this is not the end." Asterisk I didn't know what the beginning would look like yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Next year, on my birthday, I would not be forgotten, even if I was the only one who remembered. I stopped trying to be seen. It was easier that way. They were always in the lounge, Nosumra, curled on the couch, Danish beside her. She laughed like someone had told her she owned the world. And maybe in this house she did. Asterisk I started watching them not with my eyes, but with my soul. Asterisk the way Danish looked at her, the way his fingers lightly brushed her shoulder when he passed by. He used to do that with me once. Back when I was the sun and not the shadow. Asterisk at dinner, I placed food on the table. She reached for the roti with perfectly manicured hands and said with a laugh, "Oh God, this is so oily." Zara Baji still cooks like it's the 90s. Danish chuckled. Just a quiet chuckle, but it echoed in my bones. Asterisk he didn't defend me. Never did anymore. Asterisk I didn't say anything. I just turned back to the kitchen, letting the comment dissolve into the steam rising from the stove. Samra's cousin Ikra started visiting often. Asterisk she was young, loud, and wore confidence like perfume, strong and lingering. Asterisk Samra, "You've really modernized this place," Ikra said one day, looking around. Zara Bagi kept it like an old woman's house, so dull, they laughed. I stood in the hallway holding a tray of tea, my feet frozen. Asterisk Samra saw me, but didn't stop. Ikra didn't care. Asterisk, "You should totally do a makeover for Zara too," she added with a smirk. "A little lipstick won't hurt, will it?" Asterisk Danish didn't say a word, kept scrolling on his phone like my humiliation wasn't worth pausing. 4. I went back to the kitchen and placed the untouched tray on the counter. My hands were shaking, but not from pain, from something else, from a heat rising in my chest, a quiet fire. Later that night, stood in front of the mirror in my room. I stared at myself. My hair was dull, tied in a loose bun. My eyes looked older than my age. My skin was pale. I touched my face gently. Asterisk, this wasn't me. It's not the me I used to be. Asterisk, where had I gone? Asterisk, somewhere between cooking meals no one praised and cleaning messes I didn't make, I had disappeared. Asterisk, I looked deeper. Past my tired skin, past the broken eyes. And I heard something. A voice. Not loud. Not angry. Asterisk. Just. Certain. Asterisk not. For long, that night I sat down with my diary again. I didn't cry this time. I wrote slowly, letting the words bleed out of my fingers. Asterisk, they laugh now. But one day they will remember my silence and it will echo louder than their noise. Asterisk, the walls may not have changed. But I had. Quietly. Silently. But deeply. It fell from the back of a drawer. An old envelope, yellowed with time, tucked beneath a stack of bedsheets I hadn't touched in years. I picked it up carefully, as if it might crumble in my hands. My name was on its written in Danish's handwriting, careful, younger. I sat on the bed and opened it slowly. The letter was from the first year of our marriage. The ink had faded a little, but the words still whispered like a ghost. You are my peace. When the world is loud, I think of your silence and feel calm. I never want to lose the way you make me feel safe, seen, and steady. Safe, seen, steady. I read those lines over and over again. Each word cut like glass, not because they were lies, but because they were once true. I had been his peace. And still, he chose someone else. He traded peace for passion, stability for sparkle. And I traded myself for silence. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. But I didn't cry, not this time. That night, I didn't toss and turn in bed. I didn't wait for their laughter to stop echoing through the walls. Instead, I opened my diary and wrote a new line. He once called me his peace. Now, I will become my own. The next morning, I ironed my clothes, wore a soft beige hijab, and walked to the school just 10 minutes away. It was small, modest, just like me. The gatekeeper looked confused. Madame, are you looking for someone? Yes, I said, with a small smile. A job. I filled out the application form with calm hands. It had been years since I'd written something official, not since I gave up my dream of teaching to become a housewife. Back then it felt like love, like sacrifice now. It felt like erasure. The principal, Miss Heine, was kind. She wore glasses. Too big for her face, and had warmth in her voice. I like your resume, Zara, she said, scanning the paper. You seem like someone who can teach more than just lessons. I smiled. I hope so, she said. They'd call me in a few days. Walked back home feeling lighter. It wasn't a big change. Not a loud one, but it was mine. I didn't tell Danish, not because I was afraid, but because this step didn't belong to him. For once, I wanted something in my life that was just for me, something untouched by his approval or Samra's opinion. That night I sat at my desk and carefully placed the old letter into my diary. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I folded it gently and pressed it between pages, like a pressed flower once beautiful. Now a memory, my past wasn't erased, just hidden. It was folded into strength, and I was no longer surviving. I was becoming. The sky was crying. But I wasn't. Asterisk, for the first time in years, I stepped outside without fear wrapping around my ankles. I wore a modest but graceful navy blue dress, paired with a white scarf I hadn't touched since my wedding anniversary 3 years ago. It still smelled like hope. Asterisk, I didn't carry shame with me today, just a brown leather folder, my credentials, and a prayer tucked silently in my chest. Asterisk, the rain tapped softly on my umbrella as I walked to the school gate. I didn't mind it. It felt like the sky was cleansing, me washing away all the dust I had buried myself under. Asterisk, when I entered the building, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass window. I almost didn't recognize her. Chin high, shoulders straight, eyes open, alive. Miss Heine greeted me with the same warmth I remembered from our last meeting. Shh. You look confident today, she said with a soft smile. Asterisk, I think I finally believe I can be, I replied. Asterisk, we sat in her office. She asked me a few questions about children, discipline, teaching methods, but it didn't feel like a test. Asterisk, it felt like a conversation between two women who had both learned to survive. Asterisk, 10 minutes in. She closed my file and said, "We need someone like you. You're hired, Zara." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Then I smiled genuinely. From somewhere deep inside me that hadn't felt light in years, asterisk, "Thank you," whispered. Asterisk, "No," she said. "Thank you for returning. To yourself." I walked home in the rain, shoes soaked and hair slightly frizzed. But none of that mattered. I had a job. Not just a job, a place, a purpose, a beginning. Asterisk, when I opened the door. Samra was lounging on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Danish wasn't home yet. She glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. Asterisk, "Where've you been, Zara Baji modeling audition?" she said with a smirk, eyeing my outfit. Asterisk, I placed my wet umbrella against the wall and answered calmly. "I went for a job interview." That got her attention. "Oh, you're going to work now?" she asked. Mockngly? Asterisk, "Yes," I said, removing my scarf. "Teaching." "At Sunrise Grammar School?" Asterisk, Samra scoffed. "Going to teach ABCs now?" Asterisk, I smiled and met her eyes. For the first time in weeks. "Yes, and maybe I'll teach someone how not to destroy a home too." Her smirk faded. Just for a second, a flicker, a flash of something in her eyes, fear, insecurity. I walked past her without waiting for a reply. Asterisk, later that evening, Danish came home and found me humming in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with more rhythm than I'd felt in years. "You seem different," he said casually. I shrugged. "Maybe I remembered who I was before I became your background." Asterisk, he looked confused, then annoyed. But I didn't care. I didn't make tea for him. I didn't ask if he was tired. Asterisk, I didn't even tell him I got the job. Asterisk, not because it was a secret, but because it was mine. Asterisk, the next day. I walked into the staff room at the school for my orientation. Asterisk, it smelled like chalk and ink and possibility. Asterisk, a woman in her early 30s smiled at me and extended her hand. "You must be Zara." "I'm Farah, third-grade teacher and snack hoarder." Asterisk, I chuckled. "Nice to meet you." Asterisk. Within minutes, we were talking like old friends. She was warm, witty, and full of energy. It's the kind of woman who could make even Monday mornings feel light. Asterisk, "You've got kind eyes," she said suddenly, "but they've seen storms." Asterisk, I blinked, surprised. "Maybe, but I think the worst one just passed." Asterisk, she smiled gently. "Good, then you're ready to grow something new." That night, I opened my diary and wrote, Asterisk, "The world still looks the same." But I don't. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for now. For the first time, I felt like my silence wasn't a prison. It was a choice, and I had chosen to rise. Some changes don't need to be announced. Asterisk. They bloom silently like jasmine at midnight. Asterisk, weeks had passed since I started teaching, and something in me had shifted. I no longer waited to be seen. I no longer begged to be loved. Asterisk, I dressed with intention now, not to impress, but to honor myself. Soft pastels, pressed sleeves, and a light touch of Kyle that reminded me I was alive. My colleagues at school began complimenting me. My students brought me hand-drawn cards with crooked hearts and messy spelling. Asterisk, Miss Zara is my favorite teacher. One little girl wrote, Asterisk, I folded it into my diary next to Danish's old letter. Asterisk, a new love. A new validation, this time untainted. At home, I was still polite, still quiet, but not silent. I didn't serve dinner like a shadow anymore. I served it like a guest who knew her worth. Asterisk, when Samra mocked. I didn't flinch. Asterisk, when Danish ignored me. I didn't ache. I had built a world beyond this house and it loved me better. Asterisk, one evening, as I set down a cup of tea on the table, Danish looked at me longer than usual, his brows furrowed, unsure. You look different, he said. Asterisk, I turned to him slowly, my voice calm, because I stopped being invisible. Asterisk, he stared at me, searching for the woman he thought he had defined, shaped. silenced, but she was gone, and in her place stood someone he couldn't predict, couldn't understand, couldn't own that night. I heard muffled voices from the other bedroom. Samra's tone sharp, her voice louder than usual. Asterisk, you don't talk to me like before, she snapped. You're distant. Danish said something I couldn't hear, softer this time. I didn't lean closer, didn't eavesdrop. Asterisk, I simply smiled, not out of cruelty, but peace. Sometimes, justice doesn't scream, it just exists. The next morning, he lingered longer at breakfast. Asterisk, your school? It's keeping you busy? He asked cautiously. Asterisk, yes, I replied without looking up. And fulfilled, opened his mouth to speak again, but I had already stood up. My students need me more than this silence does, I said, picking up my bag. Asterisk, Samra sat across. From him, pouting, annoyed, Asterisk and I walked out, not to escape, but to return to the life I had finally chosen. That night I wrote in my diary, Asterisk, he sees me now, but too late, because I finally see myself. Asterisk, and for the first time in years, slept peacefully, not because I was loved, but because I had learned to love myself. Sometimes, silence is sharper than a scream. Asterisk, the house that once echoed with Samra's laughter, had turned cold. She sprayed no longer sweetened the air, it suffocated it. Had gone back to her city. There was no one left to applaud their little drama. Without an audience, the masks began to slip. Danish and Samra argued no often, loudly. It started with small things. Missing keys, burnt toast, a forgotten compliment. Then came the late nights. Danish would come home long after dinner, smelling like smoke in unfamiliar places. He didn't offer excuses anymore, just a shrug and a yawn. Samra didn't take it lightly. She became restless, paranoid. I heard her pacing the halls. Heard drawers open, doors slam. Heard the sound of fear in her voice. I recognized it, intimately. Asterisk 1. Night, I heard them arguing through the thin walls. Asterisk, who is she? Danish? Don't lie to me. There's no one, he muttered. You're not the same. You don't even look at me? Her voice cracked like glass. I stood by my door, hand on the knob. I didn't open it. I didn't interfere. Asterisk, I just listened quietly, patiently like fate. Asterisk, the irony of it all danced bitterly on my tongue. Part of me wanted to laugh not from joy, but from justice. So this is what it felt like on the other side of betrayal. Asterisk later that night. I passed the hallway on my way to the kitchen, and there she was. Samra. Asterisk curled in the same corner. I had once cried in, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, her makeup smudged, her body trembling not from cold, but realization. I paused, for a heartbeat. I saw myself in her, not the version she mocked, the version she never understood until now. She didn't look up? Didn't hear me? Didn't need to? Asterisk, that space belonged to Pain now, and Pain didn't care whose name you carried. I made my tea quietly and returned to my room. Asterisk in my diary. I wrote, Asterisk, karma doesn't come with fire.
Sometimes.
It wears your old pajamas and cries in your old spot.
Ah.
The next morning, Danish left early. Samra didn't come out of her room. The silence at breakfast wasn't lonely anymore, it was peaceful. Asterisk at school. Miss Hina called me into her office. Asterisk, we've nominated you for Teacher of the Month. She smiled. Your students adore you. I blinked, surprised, grateful. Outside. Farah hugged me. You're glowing these days, she said. Asterisk. I smiled. It's amazing what happens when you stop waiting for someone else to love you. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, the same one that once showed me a stranger. Now, it showed me someone whole. Asterisk, not healed, not yet, but real. And that was enough. It happened on a Tuesday. The house was already tense, words hung in the air like smoke, thick and waiting to ignite. I had just returned from school, a stack of papers in my hand, When I heard the sound of a suitcase dragging across the floor, Sam read her. Face was flushed, eyes wild. Lips pressed into a trembling line. Danish followed her down the hallway, confused and half apologizing. I didn't mean it like that, raw. Stop, listen to me. But she didn't stop. She opened the door, tossed her bag into the waiting rickshaw, and turned once, just once. Her eyes met mine. There was no venom in them, only exhaustion, and maybe a trace of understanding. She left without a word. The gate shut like a final chapter. That evening the house felt lighter. The third shadow was gone, and then Danish came. To me, he stood by the door of the living room, hesitant, like a boy caught in the wrong classroom. I made a mistake. He said. I didn't flinch. I didn't sigh. I didn't even look up at first. I kept folding my dupatta slowly, neatly, like my thoughts. Then I met his eyes. I know, said calmly. He took a step forward, hopeful. Zara, I stopped him with a gentle raise of my hand. But so did I said. I made the mistake of loving you more than I loved myself. His face shifted guilt, regret, panic, all clashing in the same breath. But we can fix this. No, I whispered. You broke something that doesn't glue back. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't ask him to leave. I simply walked to our bedroom that night and pulled my few things into a small bag. I walked into the guest room, closed the door, made a new bed. Emotionally, physically, I moved out of that chapter without burning the book that night. For the first time in years, I slept without waiting for a door to open, a voice to call, a love to return. I slept peacefully, not because I was healed, but because I had finally stopped bleeding in the morning. He knocked once. Zara. I didn't answer. I was brushing my hair, humming softly. I had school. I had students who smiled when I walked in. I had a life that was slowly learning how to live again. In my diary, I wrote. She left to escape the pain. I stayed. To rise from it, for once, the words didn't feel like survival. They felt like power. A year had passed. Asterisk and yet. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Asterisk not because time had aged me, no. It had done something far more beautiful. It had rewritten me. My book, I stayed silent. But I heard everything, sat in bookstores across the country. The title was a whisper, but its echo roared in the hearts of thousands of women. Stories began pouring in, emails, letters, tears between pages. Pain recognized pain, and healing invited. Healing, I stood backstage at a women's conference, my hands slightly trembling, but not from fear. From power? Asterisk a large poster of my book hung behind the podium. Women filled the auditorium, some with notebooks, others with tears already glistening in their eyes. Then I saw him. Danish. Asterisk he sat in the third row, not disguised, not hidden just. There, alone. His hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on me like a man trying to read a book he once wrote in but was no longer part of. Asterisk, I didn't flinch. Asterisk, I stepped up to the microphone. I wrote this book. I began, not as revenge, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove myself right. I paused. I was once a woman who whispered in corners, who swallowed her words, who believed being a good wife meant becoming invisible. The audience sat in complete silence, but then I realized something. My silence was never weakness. It was observation. It was strength waiting for the right moment to rise. Applause real, raw, asterisk Danish kept his eyes on me. I never looked directly at him, not once, because this wasn't about him. Asterisk it never had been. After the session, women lined up with their books, eyes swollen from crying. Hearts cracked open. Asterisk one woman came forward, her hands trembling as she held my book. You wrote my story, she whispered. You just didn't know it. I smiled softly, took the pen, and signed. Don't wait for them to love you. Love yourself first. She burst into tears, hugging the book like it was a lifeline. I held her gently. Asterisk, because once I was her. When the line finally disappeared, I turned to leave. That's when he approached. Danish asterisk, his eyes held the kind of regret that came. Too late to matter? I read your book, he said. I know. Asterisk it. Asterisk, I imagine it would. Asterisk, he exhaled deeply. Can we start again? Asterisk, I looked at him calmly. No hatred, no pain, just quiet understanding. Asterisk, I already did. I said asterisk, he blinked. What? Asterisk? I smiled. I already started again without you? Then I turned and walked away. Not broken, not angry, just healed. Asterisk. That night. I returned home to my apartment, the one I chose, the one I paid for. Asterisk. I lit a candle, opened my diary one last time, and wrote, asterisk. They gave me his name. I earned my own. This time I signed it. Sarah.